You've probably heard America called a nation of immigrants, right? But what did that really look like back in the mid 1800s? We're talking about a time when huge waves of new people didn't just grow the country's population, they completely reshaped its identity. Okay, get ready for this number 1.7 million. That's how many people came to America in just a single decade, from 1841 to 1850. And look, that's not just a number on a page, that is a massive wave of human beings, every single one with their own story, their own hopes, and their own reasons for seeking a new start. So, how do we make sense of this huge movement of people? Well, there's a really useful way to think about it, called push and pull factors. It's pretty simple, actually. Push factors are the bad things pushing people out of their home country. Think famine or war. And pull factors are the good things pulling them to a new place, like the promise of a job or more freedom. We're going to use this idea to look at three really different immigrant stories from this time. All right, first up, let's talk about the largest group to arrive during this period, the Irish. For them, this wasn't really a story about choice. It was a story about pure, desperate survival. The push factor for the Irish was just catastrophic. It's known as the Great Potato Famine. Between 1845 and 1852, a horrible disease wiped out their main food source, the potato. I mean, can you imagine? 1 million people starved to death, and another million had no choice but to leave, with America being their main hope for survival. So they arrive, many with absolutely nothing. Most of them ended up in the big cities on the northeast coast. And the jobs they took? They were the toughest, most dangerous jobs you can think of. They were the ones digging the Erie Canal, laying the railroad tracks, working in the factories. I mean, their labor literally built the foundation of America's new infrastructure.
Okay, now for a completely different story. It's a real contrast to the Irish experience. What happens when it's not so much about running from disaster, but running toward opportunity? Well, that's what we see with German immigration.
Yeah, the push factor for Germans was totally different. It wasn't about a lack of food, it was about political turmoil. See, there was a revolution in the 1840s that failed, and afterwards, a lot of really skilled, educated Germans were looking for political freedom and a stable economy. And America, well, it looked like the perfect place to find it. You can really see the difference between the two journeys here. You've got the Irish, escaping famine, showing up with pretty much nothing and staying in those East Coast cities to do the hard labor. But then you have the Germans leaving because of politics. Many of them actually had the money to head west, to the Midwest, and use their skills as farmers or craftsmen. And, these very different starting points made a huge difference in how they fit into American life. And their impact was huge. We're not just talking about labor here. These German immigrants were skilled craftsmen. They were brewers. Some of the brands they started are still famous today. They were the farmers who turned the Midwest into the country's heartland. And they brought ideas with them, too. They introduced kindergarten to America and new concepts about education that are still with us. All right, let's head all the way across the country. We're going to the West Coast now because there was this massive pull factor that brought people all the way across the Pacific Ocean. This next story is all about ambition. And that pull factor? It was gold. Simple as that. The California gold rush of 1848 was like a giant magnet, pulling thousands of Chinese immigrants across the ocean. They even had a name for California, Gamsan, which means Gold Mountain. They were chasing fortune, for sure, but it was also about building a better life for their families. But the gold rush didn't last forever. And when it started to fade, Chinese workers took on an even bigger, more dangerous job, building the Transcontinental Railroad. And we're talking about the hardest part, blasting and digging tunnels right through the solid rock of the Sierra Nevada mountains. It was work that a lot of people thought was just impossible. And the price they paid for that ambition was just staggering. Think about this. Out of about 12,000 Chinese workers on just that one part of the railroad, it's estimated that 1,200 of them died. They died from landslides, from explosions, from the terrible conditions. That's almost one person for every mile of track they built through those mountains. Just incredible. So, okay, we've looked at three very different groups, right? The Irish, the Germans, the Chinese. Different reasons for coming, different places they went. But once they got here, their stories started to have a lot in common. They all faced a similar struggle, and together they had a massive impact. Life in this new country was no walk in the park. It didn't matter if you were Irish, German, or Chinese, you were probably facing a really tough reality.
We're talking crowded, unhealthy living conditions, working crazy long hours for very little money, and dealing with really ugly discrimination from so-called nativists, people who were afraid of new arrivals. And this wasn't just mean words. It meant you got paid less and you were forced to live in separate neighborhoods. It literally changed the map of American cities.
But here's the thing. They didn't give up. They persevered. And all that hard work, all that digging canals and farming the land and laying down railroad tracks, it was the engine that transformed America. They were the ones who helped turn a mostly rural country into the industrial giant it was becoming.
You know, this isn't just some old story from a history book. It's the foundation for so much of what America is today. The debates we have, the challenges we faced, and the incredible cultural mix that defines the country. So it leaves us with a really important question to think about. How do the struggles and the successes of these early waves of immigrants still shape the American story right now?